unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Now, Madam President, this morning the thoughts of everyone in the Senate are with the people of Florida, who are in the midst of one of the worst storms ever to hit the state as Hurricane Ian made landfall yesterday. Ian made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane, with wind speeds reaching 150 miles an hour, storm surges reaching reported heights of 18 feet. About 2 million people are now without power, and communities that dot the coastline are seeing 3 to 4 feet of flooding. Thankfully, Ian was downgraded to a tropical storm this morning, but the damage has already been severe, and the road to recovery will be long. I will continue to monitor the situation in Florida over the coming days, and the Senate stands ready to help Floridians with whatever they need to stay safe and rebuild their communities. I want to thank all the first responders, National Guardsmen and women, local officials, volunteers, and every single person who placed themselves in harm's way to keep their communities safe. Now on CR funding. Madam President, with a little more good faith negotiation between Democrats and Republicans, I am hopeful that today's the day we'll finish passing a continuing resolution to fund the government until mid-December. Government funding is set to run out Friday at midnight, roughly 40 hours from now, and there's no reason at all for us to get anywhere near that deadline. Over the past 24 hours, both sides have continued holding fruitful negotiations to reach a finish line. We have some more work to do, a little more, but we're close enough that I hope we can finish up today, but both sides need to keep working together for that to happen. I urge both sides to keep going, because this CR is filled with many good things that both sides can support, like $12 billion in emergency aid for Ukraine, to help Ukrainians with more weapons, intelligence gathering, and aid to keep the government afloat in a time of war. 7 months since the conflict began, it's crystal clear that American assistance has gone a long way to helping the Ukrainian people resist Putin's evil, vicious aggression. But the fight's far from over, and we must continue helping the brave, valiant Ukrainian people. The CR also includes items like emergency aid to help communities across the country hammered by natural disasters, including flooding in states like Kentucky, Louisiana, Alabama, and Texas, as well as disasters in Alaska, Puerto Rico, and New Mexico, New Mexico suffered its worst wildfires in the state's history early this year. Through the CR, we'll also reauthorize FDA user fees for another 5 years, which is vital if we want to avoid any slowdown in the review of new life-saving drugs and medical devices that millions and millions of people rely on. Reauthorizing these user fees will also prevent thousands of hard-working FDA employees from being furloughed, many of whom are crucial for this life-saving review process. Finally, by passing the CR, we'll help millions of families afford their heating and utility bills over the winter. By investing $1 billion in the LIHEAP program, I want to recognize Senator Jack Reed and Senator Maggie Hassan for making sure we included this funding in the CR, because thanks to their efforts, many families will catch a break this winter by lowering their utility bills. In short, there's every reason in the world for both sides to get to yes on finalizing a CR before the end of today. Democrats will continue working with our Republican colleagues in good faith to find a path to the finish line. I want to thank our terrific chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Leahy, as well as Ranking Member Shelby for all their hard work on the CR. I hope this is the last CR of Chairman Leahy's illustrious career, because we're all hopeful that an omnibus will be the last funding bill we will do later this year. I also want to thank my colleagues on the committee who've worked day and night to avoid a shutdown, and their dedicated staffs, and I want to commend Senator Shelby, who's worked with Senator Leahy in a very cooperative way as well. The last thing the American people right now is a pointless government shutdown. I'm optimistic we're on track to avoiding one well before the funding deadline. I thank all my colleagues for their good work and their cooperation, and encourage them to keep going so we can finish the work later today. On another matter, the Senate will return to the consideration of another brilliant nominee to serve on the federal bench, Arianna Freeman, nominated to serve as Circuit Court Judge for the Third Circuit. Ms. Freeman is not only eminently qualified, Ms. Freeman is not only eminently qualified, but she's historic. She'd be the first ever black woman to sit on the Third Circuit, joining in the proud company of many Biden nominees who are helping make the bench a more accurate reflection of our country. That's something all of us are proud of. A graduate of Swarthmore and Yale, Ms. Freeman would join the bench after working with the Federal Community Defender Office for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. She's dedicated her career to making sure all people, regardless of wealth or status, have equal representation before the law. I'm confident her perspective will be an asset to the Third District, and I look forward to her confirmation later this morning. And on our accomplishments in this Congress. Finally, as Americans are set to go to polls in a little over a month, it's time to summarize the things that this Democratic majority has done in the past 2 years and make clear the options that face the American people in this election. When Democrats assumed the majority in 2021, I promised the Senate would address the challenges our country faces head-on, without delay. Not with timid solutions, but with boldness, with courage. 20 months later, because of Democratic leadership, we have lifted our country out of a crisis. We have a lot of work left to do, but let's take a look at some of the major accomplishments that passed through the Senate under this majority. In the wake of the tragedies in Uvalde, Buffalo, and so many other shootings, we promised the time had come to break the grip of the NRA. So we passed the first gun safety bill America has seen in 30 years. In the wake of high costs, dwindling tech jobs, and an emboldened Chinese Communist Party, we passed CHIPS and the Science Act to boost high-end manufacturing here in America, to turbocharge America's semiconductor industry, and secure the largest down payment in scientific research in decades. After years of veterans waiting around for help to treat their cancers, lung diseases, and other ailments caused by toxic exposure, often from burn pits, we passed the PACT Act and secured the largest expansion of veteran health benefits in ages. And finally, in the face of high energy costs and soaring health care costs, as well as the ravages of climate change, Democrats passed the groundbreaking Inflation Reduction Act, which will lower people's energy bills, make prescription drugs more affordable, cap insulin costs for seniors on Medicare, and create millions of clean jobs for years to come through the largest green investments in American history. The largest green investments in American history. It will reduce the amount of carbon that goes into the atmosphere by 40% by 2030, a huge accomplishment that will make the lives of every American now and in the future better. Passing the Inflation Reduction Act, along with ratifying the Kigali Amendment last week, is the strongest one-two punch against climate change any Congress has ever taken. I'm very proud of my caucus for sticking together. With 50 votes, it ain't easy. Madam President, and this is only what we've gotten done since June. To save our country from the worst of COVID, we passed the American Rescue Plan to put shots in people's arms and checks in people's pockets. We passed the first infrastructure law in years to fix our roads, our bridges, our highways, to expand broadband to poor and rural communities and protect our kids from the dangers of lead piping. We reformed our postal service after decades of neglect. We reinstated VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, to protect women from abuse after years of inaction. We took a stand on Asian hate crimes and declared lynching a federal hate crime after a century of delay. We also unanimously ended forced arbitration for sexual harassment in the workplace. And we confirmed the first black woman ever to sit on the Supreme Court of the United States when we confirmed Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, these are just some of the accomplishments of a Democratic majority. None have been easy in the longest 50-50 Senate ever. But I'm confident that America will be a better nation because of all the things we've done in the last 2 years. And the fight, Madam President, will keep going. With every fiber of our being, Democrats will never back away from protecting a woman's fundamental right to choose. MAGA Republicans, meanwhile, pushing national abortion bans, prosecution of women and doctors, and bans with no exception for rape or incest show the contrast between the parties. One moving forward, one looking backward and following the MAGA dictates to the far, far right. Democrats will also lower costs and build ladders to help people get into the middle class and give people the means to prosper in the middle class once they get there. Republicans, meanwhile, have made already clear what corner they're on, the rich. Republicans, meanwhile, have already made it clear whose corner they're on. The rich, the executive class, the mega corporations. Without missing a beat, Republicans gladly cut taxes for billionaires and for big business, while openly calling for Social Security and Medicare to go on the chopping block year after year. And for good measure, while Democrats want to keep taxes low for working and middle-class Americans, some on the other side have openly called for raising taxes on working families. So the contrast here is not hard to grasp. The choices between the parties run deep. The consequences to our country, enormous. We have many challenges left to overcome as a nation. But the choice is now between a party that will build on all the progress we've made or one that will undo everything we've worked to accomplish. Between a party that will protect our freedoms and a party that will conspire to take them away. Between a party that believes America is at its best when we invest in all people or to a party that will only look after the ultra-rich. Remember, their major accomplishment when they had the majority was tax cuts for the very wealthy. I'm confident that Americans will know which party is fighting in their corner. I want to thank all my colleagues for their excellent work over the past 2 years, and I look forward to building on all that work we have accomplished to set America on a path to prosperity in the 21st century. I yield the floor. No, I do not yield the floor. Mr. President, for the information of the Senate, we expect to vote on the confirmation of the Freeman nomination to be United States Circuit Judge for the Third Circuit upon reconsideration at 11:30 a.m. today. Additional votes are expected this afternoon. Is that it? I yield the floor.